Welcome everybody to today's MVP Office Hours for March 3rd. I'm Jackie Travieso. I'm joined by Dale Ziegler. We are your hosts for today's call. And as you can see first on our slide here, we've got some events listed. If you don't have these on your calendar and they're in your area or region, or you want to travel to these locations, I highly recommend that you take a look at them. Think of them as mini Dreamforce events. If you are in the Southeast area, Southeast Dreaming, which is an event that I will be attending, they're holding their second annual event. So last year was a great event. You'll have to check these out. They're like I said, mini Dreamforces. Texas and Midwest Dreaming, those are, I guess you call them veteran events. So you might want to check those out as well. And if you don't have Dreamforce on your calendar, November 6th through the 9th, there you go. Add that. Let's go to our next slide. And for those of you who are new to our call, our format, we hold this called the first and third Friday of the month. It's an open Q&A discussion, so we don't have anything scripted. We just take calls from those who have dialed in and do our best to give you some pointers, maybe an approach, some resources, and definitely some recommendations. This particular format really isn't conducive for troubleshooting code or specific detailed automation or anything that needs a step-by-step review. We do recommend that you put that kind of questions or inquiries into answers and get the whole world to weigh in on that. Then if you'd like, you can put a link to that post in the MVP Office Hours Success Community page, and we can also address it there too. But if you're looking for troubleshooting code or step-by-step reviews, that's probably the best place to put that. We are recording today's call, as we always do. We'll be posting that to both community and Twitter, so if you need to catch any of the replay, you can do that. If you haven't already, can you please put yourselves on mute? We want to make sure we eliminate any background noise. Dale and I will do our best to manually mute anybody who we might be able to determine has some background noise that's disruptive, so we'll help with that as well. Please ask any question that you have by doing one of a couple of things. Raise your hand in the chat, and then we'll call on you, especially if we've got several people in the queue. Otherwise, if we have dead air, feel free to just go ahead and say, hey, I have a question. Announce yourself so we know who we're speaking to. Sometimes we want to add follow-up information either in community or maybe on Twitter directly to you. And the other thing is that, please, everybody is welcome to share their experiences. I don't know that we actually have said this in the past, but anybody on the call who has input, please feel free to go ahead and do that. This is a safe space. Share your experiences. And I know we've got a couple other MVPs on the line. We as MVPs have questions as well, so please ask those, because we know that if we have the questions, others have the questions as well. And then our last piece here is we've got an attendee survey that we would love some feedback on. And if you just go to that bit.ly MVPHO survey and let us know, are we meeting your needs as a community resource, as an open Q&A discussion? Is this something that you get value from? Or if you have other recommendations, we'd love to hear them there as well. And I'd like to go ahead and introduce our special guest for today, David Giller. He's just an all-around technology geek who is amazing. We should all strive to be like him. David comes to us as a trainer and a consultant and a blogger. He's an author. He's a user group leader in the Northeast. He has an amazing, I think, story to tell us, and one that is unique in that prior to him becoming a Salesforce.com user evangelist guru, he was an attorney. So, David, I'd like to welcome you to our call and ask you to tell us your story about how one becomes or goes from an attorney to becoming a Salesforce.com administrator guru. Evangelist, because I'm very curious about this story.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I feel honored to be here, humbled, and even as I heard you introduce me, I'm thinking, I'm just a geek. That's it. That's it. So I'm happy to share my story. So I I was inspired, showing my age a little bit, which I'm totally cool with that. I was inspired by the TV show LA Law to go to law when I was in college. LA Law was on TV. It was a very hot TV show at the time. I was really inspired by that to pursue a career in law. I felt that through the legal profession, it would allow me to help people, or whether it's organizations, situations, families, with struggles that they were having, and by solving those problems through the legal system. So I went ahead and pursued the legal profession by going to law school. Took the bar. I'm admitted to the bar in New York, New Jersey, and Washington, D.C., and I was actually practicing law for a while in a couple of different areas of the law, and I can't even say that I hated the legal profession. I actually loved it. I found it very rewarding, quite different from what I saw on TV in terms of LA Law, quite different indeed. It's like someone going into the medical profession because they watch they watch any type of medical show and then they realize, oh wait, this is not exactly what I thought it was, but it's okay, that's cool. So I absolutely love the legal profession, but I always had this tremendous interest, even when I was in law school, always had this tremendous interest in business processes and business operations. And I was always a geek. I was always a computer geek. So even when I was in law school, personal laptops first started becoming affordable and practical. And of course, I went out and got myself a laptop. And this is even before Windows. So I was using DOS and WordPerfect and taking the laptop to class. And instead of typing notes on paper, I was writing my notes on paper. I was typing my notes on the laptop. And as I was doing this, I was also creating in WordPerfect, I was creating a table of contents and an index on all of my notes. And the ultimate goal really was, because at orientation, all of the law professors basically said, by the way, in law school, all of the exams are open book, and you can bring whatever you want. And I'm thinking, I will bring all of the notes that I could possibly have and my textbook, and I'll make it super easy to find anything during the final exam. If, let's say, I have a question on assault and battery or trespass or whatever it might be, I could just look either in the table of contents or in the index and find the notes that I need. So I would be doing all of this typing and all of these. I'd create macros and page layouts, etc. Again, all in DOS. And essentially, I took that passion for the technology and passion for business processes and business operations, and even I implemented them actually even when I was practicing law by creating all kinds of macros and workflows and writing out process maps on paper for handling of legal cases. And along the way, even though I wasn't looking for it, there were a couple of jobs that landed on my lap that were outside of practicing law, still related to the legal profession, but focused on business operations, marketing, product development, targeted towards the legal profession. And those were these jobs were jobs that, A, I never pursued. They completely landed on my lap. And B, I never would have imagined in my wildest dreams that I would ever get a job like that I would ever be doing that type of thing. And I was just like sort of shocked the first time that it happened. And I'll give an analogy. So the first job that was leaving the legal profession was for a company called West Publishing, and it was to help law students pass the bar exam. It was to help create a course to help law students pass the bar exam. And I give people the analogy that it's sort of like if General Motors were to start up a driver's ed course. If this was a brand new startup within a large organization, and I was like employee number 4 that they offered a job to. There was no logo, there were no materials, there was nothing. And my job description was help get this thing off the ground. And I thought to myself, I will never have an opportunity like this land on my lap. This is so freaking cool. Anyway, so I took it, and I really had no clue what I was getting into. Before I said yes, I turned to my wife and said, am I out of my mind? I just went to law school, and I just got all of these law school loans, and I'm just completely ditching it for something else. And her response was, you know what? No one can ever take the legal credentials away from you. You can always go back to practicing law if this doesn't work out. And this is a pretty safe bet. It's a rather large company, and it's a nice startup. And if you do the right thing, it'll be fine. So I left the legal profession at that point in order to pursue this business-oriented role. And along the way, I started learning and building on the passion that I had and learning about business operations and marketing and exploring technology in a far grander landscape than I ever had before. And that job led to another job, which led to another job, which inevitably I found myself on a job interview at NBC Universal. And I will never forget being on the interview. I promise this is exactly what I said to the woman who later became my boss. I turned to her during the interview and I said, I have no clue what I'm doing here. And she said, what? What did you just say? I said, I don't know what I'm doing here. She said, what do you mean by that? I said, I was a philosophy major and I went to law school. And I'm sitting here on a job interview in Rockefeller Center for NBC in the IT department. I'm hugely passionate about technology. I love technology. I'm not an IT guy. And other than turning on NBC on TV, I know nothing about the entertainment business. She said, listen to me. What we are looking for is as follows. We need someone who can help be a translator, a liaison between all of the geeks here in IT and the business people out in the rest of the organization. We need someone to work with very senior leadership, everyone from the CEO to the president of each division of NBC, to be the translator, to talk to them about their business operations and their goals and their objectives and their initiatives, and to help translate that to the rest of us in the IT department. And then when we have something that we need to communicate to them that's technology-based and it's way above their head or far too granular for them to comprehend, we need someone who can translate that into the business consequences and impact that it will have for them. And I turned to her and I said, oh my God, I could do that in my sleep. And of course I got the job.
That is fantastic. I love that you use the word translators, because as I'm listening to you tell this story, I realize that's what we are as admins. We are translators between the end business and the executives and everybody who wants something out of Salesforce, but yet they don't exactly know what they want. They just want it to do it. We have to figure out what that it is and how to get there. So I love that. I wrote down translators because I think that is a great graphic of what we are and what we do. So with that, let's see. Does anybody have any questions for David about anything Salesforce.com related or technology related? Let's open it up. And as we talk, David, I didn't mention this to you earlier, but we're going to capture resources as soon as Dale's able to move his little.
Hi there. Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Here we can.
Yes, please.
Hi, yeah. My name's Nick. I have a small consultancy called Creative Digital Solutions. We are working on an interesting flow that we're hoping to get some questions answered for. I don't know if this is the venue for that, though.
Go ahead and ask the question, and we'll see if we can either point you in the right direction or give you a solution.
Okay. What we're trying to do is update the contact role associated with an opportunity based on a custom field that we've mapped from lead, just contact role. We created a contact role field on the lead. Create a contact role field and opportunity. Map that. That's easy, right? But that's only a one-to-one, so we need many-to-one. We need the contact role updated for the contact. So we need based on the contact role mapped from the leads, right? Does that make sense? I don't know if I explained that very well.
It does.
And I actually think that I have the answer for you, believe it or not.
Great.
I am going to, hang on 1 second, I will send Dale a URL that you can pull up on the screen, and if you want, you can share it with everyone. So Judy Sohn actually published this article, and don't get distracted by the fact that this article was actually published with a focus on the nonprofit sector. And what we're looking at right here is, I think, identical to what you're talking about, where it would involve creation of both process builder and a flow in order to take a particular attribute that you have on the contact. So it could certainly start at the lead record, and then when the lead is converted, it would be passed over from the lead over to the contact. And that would then trigger through a process builder, it would trigger the appropriate process that can then kick off the flow to add that person or update that person's contact role on the related opportunity.
Yes, and we found that, and I believe, unfortunately, I'm not the one that was building this out. Is one of my guys, and so I have what he's done here in front of me. I don't quite fully, I don't have my mind wrapped all the way around it, so I probably wouldn't. I don't know, he can't make it for this, unfortunately. But I'm wondering if either you could perhaps kind of walk me through the steps there. Or if you don't have time for that, I can just go back to the article myself. But we've started that. We're there. We've got the flow. We've got the process builder, but it's still not working. So
I'll tell you that when I first saw this article, I had a little bit of a petrified moment of like, holy cow! I've played around with flow before, but never to this extent. This is way beyond my competency level. And Judy actually did an amazing job of writing this out with, as you can see, all of the screenshots. I simply followed exactly her instructions and it worked for me. So I don't know if I have any additional insights that I could possibly share or even think of that go beyond this article. At least that's me.
Yeah, I probably just need to read it myself. I haven't done it. I just know that he found this, and I think that this is what he based his work off of. But there's some part of it that we're not, either we didn't follow correctly or I'm not sure. So
I'll tell you, if it was me, so if I had followed all of the steps here and still had a challenge, what I personally would do is leverage the success community. So I would post in the success community a synopsis of here's what I'm trying to accomplish. Here's a link to the article that I followed, but it's just not working for me, and maybe include a screenshot of here's what I see, which is it's not the expected outcome. And I can pretty much guarantee you're going to get some really smart people giving you some awesome advice on how to resolve it. That's precisely what I would do.
What I would also add, just looking at this article for the first time, I would make absolutely sure that whatever's in the lead object, if you're pulling or if you're using a pick list, make sure that the pick list options on the lead field are exactly the same as where they're going to land on the opportunity object, and have your admin or your dev make absolutely sure that those fields are mapping to each other. Because looking at this at a high level, this is assuming that you're starting from the opportunity, but it sounds like you're coming from leads. So you need those foundational steps in there first to make sure that your pick values are one-to-one and because that could also be hanging this up.
Yeah, that part I believe we are good to go. It's taking the values from the custom field and mapping them into the contact role, using flows in the project roller that we're stuck on. But yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Well, and just one other really quick thing to note is lead conversion is its own special beast. It's kind of protected off in its own area of the world. So what could potentially be hanging this up also is the actions that are being done to convert a lead to create an account contact opportunity. The information may technically not exist on the opportunity for it to then create an opportunity contact role. I could be wrong on that, but just bear that in mind that whenever you're coming from lead conversion, it kind of does its own thing in terms of the order of operations. So.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you for your input.
And I posted the link in the chat window for everybody to see, so you can grab that there and also drop it in the notes. We have a question from Stuart. Stuart, go ahead.
Might help if I unmute myself. That would help. So I believe that David has had experience in training lots of different users.
Yeah.
And as a solo admin, I'm wondering if you have any tips and tricks that are maybe generic but Salesforce related about how to set up and define your user trainings.
I actually love talking about this topic. I have a lot to share on it. So thank you, Stuart. I appreciate it. So just to give you guys the background on where I'm coming from with regard to the advice I'm about to give you. So when I was at GE Capital, I was part of a very small team that did the rollout of Salesforce across GE Capital Americas. And over time, different people moved around within the organization. And at one point, my manager turned to me and she said, David, you know how we have 2,000 users across the U.S. and across 8 to 10 different sub-businesses? Yeah. And you know how so-and-so on the team just recently took another job and she's no longer part of the team? Yeah. Well, I need you to take on those responsibilities of training all of our end users and how to do everything in Salesforce. And my head exploded, and I turned beet red, and steam started coming out of my ears. And I stood up, and my finger was pointing in her face, and I said, are you freaking out of your mind? Do you think that I want to do this? Do you realize that I'm an attorney? Do you realize that I did the rollout of Salesforce? This is a never-ending job. Nobody will want to stop. No sales rep is going to stop closing deals to make time for me to teach them how to log into Salesforce and how to log their tasks and update their opportunities. I will be the punching bag of the entire organization because everyone's going to say, I don't know how to do it because this David Giller guy talks too fast, or I wasn't available, or I just don't get it. Can he do it again? She said, David, I know. I still need you to do it. Like, okay, fine. Anyway, so that brought me to where I had no choice but to take on these responsibilities. And so everything that I'm telling you now, I'll be completely blunt. It was all from a CYA perspective. I was on the defense from day one. How am I going to roll out training where I am not the punching bag for every single sales rep across the entire organization and eliminate all of the excuses for them to possibly say that they don't know how to use Salesforce because of me or because the training was inadequate? So what I did was basically I identified what are the core common first of all, I already had a deep understanding of the Salesforce configuration. If you don't have a deep understanding of the existing Salesforce configuration and the user groups that are user groups as in the audience of users who are expected to be using Salesforce and the role that they play within the organization and what is expected of them. If you don't have that, you can't even move forward. So as a prerequisite, you need to have a baseline understanding of the types of users, of the types of configuration that they have, the types of apps that they're expected to use, and the metrics that are important for them to measure success for themselves or their managers to measure success of the direct reports. And once I did that, I identified the commonalities. So, okay, regardless of what type of business unit different users are in, there's a common denominator where we have sales team members. And regardless of which unit they're in, so GE Franchise Finance, GE Aircraft Finance, GE Corporate Finance, GE Fleet Finance, all of the sales team members, they all need to use, whether it's leads, contacts, accounts, activities, opportunities, reports, and dashboards. They all have the same common need. Now, it's possible that within, let's say, GE Fleet Finance, they have certain apps that are only unique to them, or certain record types that are only unique to them. That's fine. But I identified the common core curriculum that applies to everyone. And then I started building out what are the core foundational things that everyone needs to know. It's a prerequisite for doing their job. And so I was, again, first, background of understanding of the configuration, of the needs of the end users, and then building out the core common curriculum. Once I identified the core common curriculum, the next challenge was how am I actually going to deliver it in a way across different time zones. Most of the users, I did not even see them face to face. They were all sprinkled all over the place. They didn't necessarily have time or they weren't going to make the time to attend the training. So what I did was I used the concept of, from my perspective, I thought of it as a boot camp, but I presented it to them as lunch and learn sessions. So I would schedule lunch and learn sessions sometimes smack in the middle of the day to be able to address the different time zone differences So let's say 12 or 1 o'clock, only for an hour. There's no way in the world I'll get anyone to agree to attend more than an hour. So only an hour. It's completely web-based, and it was going to be recorded. So, and I said, here's what we're going to cover. Join us on Tuesday from, let's say, 12 to 1 p.m. Eastern, where we're going to cover the following topics in a WebEx meeting. And I had to do a little bit of marketing of this. And posting it on Chatter, sending it out via email to all of the users, sending it out repeatedly. And I didn't care if people thought that I was a spammer. Again, I was in CYA mode. I was on the defensive to make sure that not a single rep could ever turn to their manager and say, oh, I didn't know that there was training on Tuesday. So I did a lot of marketing about it before it ever happened. Reminders an hour before, sign up, don't forget, join us soon. We're looking forward to seeing you. We're going to talk about, how to capture your activities in Salesforce. And of course, the session was recorded. From my perspective, I really didn't care whether or not I had 2 or 200 or 500 people actually attending. What I cared about was making the crisp recording. Because afterwards, I would take that recording and I would upload it to a site that was accessible to all of the GE employees. And then I would do some marketing once again by sending out emails and posting it in Chatter with links saying, by the way, in case you missed it, here's a link to the recording where I teach how to do A, B, and C, X, Y, and Z. And I would just keep repeating that process. So if I needed to do it in a more aggressive, accelerated pace, I would not necessarily do it once a week. I would do it twice a week, let's say Tuesday and Thursday, until I got through the entire curriculum. And by doing that, it established a baseline very, very quickly across all of the users for the core features that they needed to use. At the same time, I had to take into account the nuances that apply to specific groups of users. So it could be based on the division that they were in, could be based on the type of app that they had, the role that they had, so manager versus a sales rep. And that's where I had to start identifying the anomalies of what types of users are we talking about and what is the gap, what is the delta that was not covered in my original curriculum that I need to cover for them. And then I would simply create a separate curriculum for them that I would do in the exact same format. So along the way, I was building a portfolio of all of these recordings that were accessible to anyone across the organization. And let's say someone who is in GE franchise finance knew that aside from the core curriculum, there were also 2 or 3 or 4 additional recordings that were more appropriate and tailored specifically for them, and maybe the record types or workflows or other integrations that were only appropriate for those types of users. In addition to that, there still were some groups of users who still insisted on having an in-person, face-to-face type of training. So of course, I had to oblige in order to address that. But at the very least, I was not going to be flying out, let's say, to Dallas, Texas, in order to teach people how to do core basic functionality, like how to use search in Salesforce, because that was already covered. So I made it clear to them, if I'm coming out to do an in-person training, let's be effective and efficient about it, and let's focus on just the things that were not covered in all of the training sessions that were already provided.
So David, have you built a curriculum in that same style and fashion for any kind of lightning transition?
That is an excellent question.
Kind of loaded too.
Yeah. So I do have quite a few of my own clients that are using Lightning. So I simply followed the exact same. I know it's not answering your question exactly, but I will be getting to it. So for those organizations that are not using Classic whatsoever, it really is the same, almost identical curriculum, but it's simply done in Lightning. By the way, one other thing that I should have called out earlier that I did not. When it comes to training, one of my primary rules of thumb is to have 0 or minimal PowerPoints. As soon as you pull up a PowerPoint in any training curriculum at all. People mentally go to sleep instantly. It is the best way to put people to sleep. Forget melatonin. You put up a PowerPoint and they zone out because they immediately say, oh, I'll just get a copy of the PowerPoint. So what I do when I provide training, I don't have any PowerPoint whatsoever. I show them a bulleted list of here are the things, and sometimes it's just in Word, sometimes it's in Evernote, just a bulleted raw list. Here are the things that we're going to cover today. Or I'll pull out the email that I sent them as a reminder, as an invite. Join us and here's what we're going to cover. And I basically say the entire training is live in Salesforce, whether we're talking live in production or live in the sandbox, irrelevant. It's completely hands-on, and the participants are expected to be logged into Salesforce, following along, clicking through the same way that I am as I'm doing it, so they feel that it's more of a hands-on experience. Anyway, going back to answer your question, Jackie, with regard to transitioning from Classic to Lightning. So it's funny you should ask, because what I'm in the process of building out right now is my company is Brainiate, and I'm building out an arm of Brainiate, which is Brainiate Academy. And for Brainiate Academy, I'm actually building out a set of on-demand modules and on-demand courses for end users to teach them how to use Salesforce, and I'm following essentially the same core curriculum that I described earlier. But what I'm actually doing is I'm in the on-demand course, I'm actually teaching people how to do the same features, the same functionality, both in Classic as well as Lightning, in order to help address those people that are in Classic and they're simply curious about Lightning, those people that are working in Lightning, or those people who are working in an environment where in the process of transitioning and they have the fear of God when the concept of Lightning experience comes up. This way they can see when it relates to, let's say, how do I find the related list, or how do I create a report, or how do I create an opportunity or update an opportunity. They can see, here's how we do it in Classic. Okay, that part I know. And then I switch the screen to say, now we're going to do the exact same thing in Lightning, and this way I cover it in bite-sized pieces following the exact same curriculum.
I think that is a fantastic idea. When you have that up and live, will you let us know, and we'll let the audience know how they can get to that?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's fantastic. Yep. I think that would help a lot of people.
Yep. Stuart, thank you for the question.
All right, any other questions? Remember, no question is too big or too small. All right, while people are thinking, David, why don't you tell us about your new podcast series? I just caught wind of that and haven't had a chance to listen, but I see you've had a couple episodes that you posted.
Yeah, so I recently started up a podcast called The Brainiate Show. And for those who are curious about it, you can find it on your favorite podcasting app. So TuneIn, Google Play, Stitcher, iTunes, etc. As a user group leader and being just someone who's a total geek involved in the Salesforce community in many different ways, I get a huge thrill out of sharing best practices from others to, like, being it goes back to being the facilitator, like I mentioned before, like I had in my role at NBC, the facilitator, the translator between those people who have nuggets of information and those people who are looking to learn from that information or are hungry to solve a particular business problem with the information that needs to be shared. So aside from the fact that I certainly have a whole lot of hands-on experience myself that I'm happy to share, I get a bigger thrill out of sharing the experiences of others. So the podcast is primarily the primary format and goal of the podcast is for sharing of best practices, ideas, tips, tricks, hacks, focus on new features, cool apps that are shared by others within the Salesforce community, just to share it with those who are looking to up their game and become Salesforce rock stars. And I can tell you that it's been a lot of fun so far. It's been a learning experience. I was absolutely petrified before uploading my first episode. I was absolutely terrified before even recording my first episode. But I sort of felt that, you know what, I'm just going to bite the bullet and do this. And how bad could it possibly be? If it's that horrible, nobody will listen, nobody will know. And what's the difference? I can go ahead and delete it afterwards. But it really has been a lot of fun, and the feedback has been fantastic. People have been loving it, and I'm coming up with lots of ideas of different people to showcase. So the people that I'm looking to interview on the podcast are Salesforce customers, Salesforce users, user group leaders, Salesforce employees, employees at companies that have various apps for Salesforce, and each person has different perspective, different experiences that they can share. So that's really the goal of the podcast, while at the same time having a little bit of fun and sharing some cool experiences, maybe even some frustrating experiences. It's a little bit of group therapy in a way.
That's fantastic. It looks like we have a question. I'm not sure if you actually answered it, but John Graff is asking if you're acting as your own producer or if you have enlisted someone to do the editing of the post. And if you said that, I apologize. I want to make sure that his question gets answered.
That's a good question. So yeah, I actually initially felt that there's no way that I have the bandwidth to take this on. So I initially wanted to get someone else to do the editing, etc. for me. And then I realized that by the time it will take for me to ask someone to, whether it's to add in the intro or edit out certain pieces or to create the cover sheet, the cover image for the podcast or the corresponding blog post, I might as well just do it myself. So that's one thing that I need to improve for myself, to delegate a little bit better. But sadly, it's still sitting with me, and maybe that's one way for me to at least improve the process, because if I delegate the process out to someone else, I really don't know what is clunky and inefficient about it. So for now, it's me, but that is not the goal whatsoever.
Very good. I believe that we may have lost Dale because we're not getting your resources added, but everybody in the audience will get those resources added or posted and make them available to you. But I think we might be in like freeze mode on our screen. Nathan Cooper has raised his hand. He's got a question.
This is Nathan, company Hippo Multipower. We just recently got upgraded to Salesforce Professional, so I finally get to play around in sandbox mode, which is great.
Congratulations. And
I'm having trouble with getting email, simulating, sending emails from Salesforce in the sandbox. Is that even possible in sandbox, or I might be missing something?
Are you talking about generating in the sandbox, going to, let's say, a contact and hitting the send an email button to kick off an email? Is that what you're talking about?
Right.
You should be able to do that. And in the subject line, I believe it's in the subject line of the email, there's always a prefix. I believe that's where it is, where there is some glaring indicator that says sandbox all over it in order to really prevent people from using the sandbox as another production instance. Right. But you should have that ability within a sandbox, absolutely.
Okay. Then do you have any tips on triggering an email from Process Builder or like a closed opportunity, stuff like that?
It's funny that you should ask that, because just yesterday I was in an on-site meeting with a client, and they were asking me for something like this. They were asking me how to automate. For them, the scenario that they brought up was on the lead process. They initially asked, anytime a team member leaves and logs an activity, and the activity type is let's say left voicemail, to automatically trigger a follow-up email to go out as a standard template email instead of the team member having to do it manually each time. So I responded by saying, well, through Process Builder, we can absolutely do that. So yes, through Process Builder, you can identify what the trigger should be based on what criteria the email should go out. It does need to be a template email that you already have in the communication templates section in Salesforce. And you can identify exactly who it should go out to. So in this case, presuming that for an opportunity, when an opportunity is closed, it might be based on an individual for the contact role, or you might have a custom field on the opportunity for the primary contact that's associated to the opportunity. But either way, I'm assuming that that's the contact who will be the recipient of this email. You can absolutely use Process Builder in order to identify the trigger that anytime an opportunity hits a stage of close to automatically take the following template email and automatically send it out to the following person. From a technology perspective, it's doable completely. From a business operations perspective, it's something you should proceed with a lot of caution on, because you might have scenarios where, first of all, someone could unintentionally, mistakenly put an opportunity to a closed one stage, and I have no clue what you're going to put in that email, but it's still going to go out.
Right.
The other thing is we might have scenarios where the opportunity was closed one, but before the email goes out, the sales rep, chances are that the sales rep actually wants to customize that email based on interactions, based on the nuances of the opportunity that we're talking about. And if it goes out automatically, it could be a challenge.
This email would be kind of an internal, almost an internal flag for manager and internal sales team to look at the closed opportunity, make sure information is correct on it, all that good stuff.
Okay, so my recommendation for this is, instead of sending an email, I don't know if your organization is using Chatter yet, but I would recommend that you could do one of two things. First of all, in theory, you could create a task and assign a follow-up task, and assign the task to the particular individual that you have in mind. But the better alternative, it depends on what you're looking to track. The alternative that I strongly recommend is that you leverage Process Builder, that anytime an opportunity hits a stage of closed one, that you automatically post to Chatter a notification, a reminder, a gentle nudge to particular team members, where you're automatically mentioning those team members in your Chatter post. And by doing that, first of all, they will get the notification directly in Salesforce that they were tagged in a post. They will, depending on their Chatter email notification settings, they will get an email notification indicating that they were tagged in the post. And that will also allow them to simply hit reply if they want to respond, saying, I did it, don't worry, I got it covered. And if they're using the Salesforce One mobile app, they will get the notification directly in the mobile app as well, that they were tagged in the post.
Okay.
So that is a great use case, by the way. Way better than sending an automated email to the customer, because that's where some dangerous things can happen.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Stuff. Yep.
Thank you for the question. We've got Rhonda Ross has her hand up. Rhonda.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to that question. You had started off by saying, maybe you were overlooking something because the email wasn't going out. One thing you should take a look at is when you first do the sandbox, it automatically sets it up so that it's not going to send out emails to protect it, so it doesn't go out, to protect you, so you don't automatically start spamming people when you're doing testing in the sandbox. But you can change that setting under deliverability, so you might want to check that just to see if it's set to send out emails or not.
That's a great point.
Thank you, Rhonda. All great stuff. Anybody else have questions? Comments, thoughts? While they're continuing to think, let me ask you a question, David. If you have had an opportunity to review Spring 17, do you have any favorite, and let's start with maybe classic, if we can differentiate them, features?
Yeah. So when it comes to classic, there hasn't necessarily been anything that stood out to me as it relates to Spring 17, the Spring 17 release. However, when it comes to Lightning, oh boy, there's a whole lot. So, and I'm all about learning new things and tapping into new features and playing around with them and leveraging them. So even though I will admit, there are many times throughout the day where I find myself toggling back to Classic. There's nothing like the comforts of home, of the familiar, where you go back into Classic because it's just faster. You know where to click and what to do. Yes, I'm often finding myself going back to Classic, but I definitely prefer Lightning as far as the general user interface is concerned. And a lot of the features that are nowhere to be found in Classic that are in Lightning, I completely love them. So, for example, everything around the utility bar in the Spring 17 for Lightning, the utility bar, for those who are not familiar with it, on the bottom of Salesforce, or actually, Dale, if you want, I was just going to suggest that. Thank you. If you could just if you want to pull a Google search, just to pull it up to show people what it's all about. The utility bar, really cool for those who have not seen it before. It's essentially a footer that goes across the bottom of the screen in Lightning that will allow you to, by the way, what happens to me, I find it funny. Very often I will do a Google search on a particular feature just to show someone while I'm doing a screen share with them, and what inevitably comes up is my own blog post. I'm like, oh, I forgot I even wrote that. I was wondering whether or not that might come up when you do the Google search right now. So the utility bar allows you to customize, to select particular features and functionality that can appear on the bottom footer of your screen in Lightning, which is incredibly powerful. So it allows you to put, for example, you could have the Chatter publisher, the Chatter feed. It allows you to put a particular list view that your users might be using on a regular basis right there in the footer. That to me, that's huge. Console, everything around the whole console. There we go, right there on the screenshot that you have smack in the middle of the screen. It's the lower left-hand portion that's showing what the utility bar is all about. Console is another big one. So the ability to have essentially multiple tabs open. I can't tell you how many times I'm doing a screen share with a client and I see that they have, I'm not exaggerating, 15 to 20 different tabs open, all Salesforce. And I turn to them and say, what are you doing? Why do you have that? And they say, well, sometimes I need to look at the contact and the account and the opportunity and the activities and the report. And jumping around between all the two, there we go, that's console. And jumping around between all of them is a real challenge. Well, by leveraging the console type of functionality, the Lightning Console, it allows you to have multiple records open. And you can also control whether they're open in different tabs or in different sections on the page. That's another huge one. The next feature that I absolutely love in Lightning for Spring 17 is in the upper right-hand portion of the screen to leverage the favorites. So just waiting for it to come up on the screen. So many of us are familiar. Actually, sometimes people are not familiar with it at all. In Classic, you can take any URL for any record that you're on. When you're in Classic, you could be looking at a report, at a dashboard, at an activity, at a lead, at an opportunity, and you could just cut and paste the URL. It's a nice, rather short URL. You can cut and paste that into an email, into an instant message, and just share it with anyone on your team. And hey, by the way, take a look at this contact, and how come you haven't logged any activities against it in the last 10 days? You could just do that by cutting and pasting the URL. You could save it as a favorite in your browser, and it makes it very easy to access that same record at any time. By using favorite in Lightning, we now have favorites where that feature is essentially baked in directly into the user experience, into the core of the screen itself, where you can have different favorite records directly there in the upper portion of the screen. So no matter where you are in Salesforce, you can have links to those. So it could be, let's say, a favorite report or multiple reports that you have easily accessible, one click away from no matter where you are in Salesforce. I mean, these are some huge features, only recently available.
Awesome. That's very cool. Show of hands real quickly. How many have already transitioned to Lightning? like we've got one. Okay. How many are considering transitioning to Lightning this year? Okay, so we've got one who has transitioned and two who are considering it this year. Okay. There are some tools in Salesforce that will help you decide if and when, or rather how, what you currently have that is translatable. So you might want to start looking at those to see how much. We're never going to have 100% feature parity. It's not going to happen. So you might want to start looking at that analysis that Salesforce provides and start mapping out your transition, even if it's for next year, because you do have to put some thought into it. And I would say that we also just need to consider that all of the releases going forward are going to be heavily focused, if not maybe even, I mean, I can't say 100%, but 99% focused on Lightning features and functionality. So just something to think about and continuing to educate ourselves on so that we can make those transitions when it's appropriate for us.
I'll just add to that by saying for any Salesforce admin, even before your organization is ready, even if your organization is adamantly saying there's no way we're moving to Lightning anytime soon, and I realize that's a common thought. Even as an admin, what I would suggest is play around in Lightning anyway, because at some point in time, there's going to be some catalyst that will get your organization to realize either we should maybe explore it or we have to move to Lightning. It will come at some point in time. And at that point, if the organization is looking to you as the resource of the valuable resource internally within the organization to know Salesforce, and if you respond with a deer in the headlights look, it will not be good for you. So anything that you can learn to play around, to become familiar with Lightning, even if it's at your own pace, it will allow you to respond to that initial request or command, like it landed on my lap, like Salesforce landed on my lap. I didn't ask for it. It was shoved down my throat. But it will allow you to respond by saying, oh, awesome, here are some really cool features that I can't wait to roll out. And by you doing that, it will allow you to further build on anything that you've played around with, to further build upon that by exploring even more some of the features and functionality, some of the customization requests, some of the requirements that your organization has, to turn you into a superstar within your own company and to be the leader of this the transition over from Classic into Lightning.
It'll also help you with any kind of development that you're going through right now, things that you need to consider so that it is Lightning ready when you do flip the switch. So that way you're not building something now and then having to rebuild it down the road.
Absolutely.
Does anyone have any questions around Lightning?
I will say I'm pulling up a page right now that we've actually brought up in the last few office hours meetings. It is the official Lightning Experience Roadmap for help and training. This is not someone's blog. This is not speculation. This is straight from the horse's mouth. So as everyone thinks about their Lightning journey, keep this page bookmarked. It will serve you a lot of good. It is a very long page, and it goes out all the way to winter 18. So we're in spring 17 now. You got summer, you got winter. They are a couple releases ahead, and the plan is to keep this page as a living document. So
that is a fantastic resource. Thank you, Dale. Okay, we've got about 5 minutes left. Are there any other questions? They don't have to be Lightning related. Classic is fine.
And for better or for worse, I have a ton of experience in Classic. I'm happy to talk about anything you want in Classic.
All right, I don't see anybody else raising their hand. So, David, thank you so much for spending this hour with us and imparting this fantastic information. I hope you'll join us again in the future. I think that everyone got a lot of benefits from your resources. I'm looking forward to the catching up on the Brainiac podcast, or Brainiate podcast, and also checking out the Academy when you've got that up and running. So
thank you.
Thank you very much. For everybody else, March 17th, Jared Miller will be joining us. Jared and I met, back in 2006. So he and I have kind of a history together. We were running the Tampa user group way back when. And you may know him or know his voice from the Button Click Admin podcast. He was one of the original co-hosts with Mike Gerhold. And if you didn't know him from there, then you may know him from One of These Things podcast. So he's one of the 3 hosts for that series as well. He's got a lot of experience under his belt as well, so we're going to welcome him on the 17th. And just a reminder, if you would please check out our survey and let us know how we're doing, if we need to make some improvements. One of the questions that we ask for those who are more senior attendees to the call is, do you like the old format where we might have 5 or 6 MVPs on the line without a special guest, or do you like the special guest where we set some maybe dedicated topics, not solely those topics, but at least we target some topics so that if you've got the right group of people to ask. So if you would just go to that bit.ly, which is MVP HO survey, and let us know how we're doing. Other than that, thank you everyone so much for joining us. We appreciate it. Feel free to post any other questions in the MVP Office Hours Success Community page, and we'll do our best to get you the answers. Again, David, thank you so much. Dale, thank you for being my co-host, and everybody have a great weekend. Enjoy.
Thank you. Bye-bye.